Atlanta's Season 3 and Season 4. I've spoken about Seasons 1 and 2 in the past, and honestly, I thought I had seen Season 3, but I've been so behind on like movies and shows that I wanted to watch that by the time I got around to Atlanta to catch up, I had missed 2 seasons. Atlanta is an FX original show that you can also stream on Hulu. It was created by Donald Glover. More on him in a bit. But first, I want to give you guys the official synopsis in case you're not familiar with the show. And as usual, shout out the writers. Atlanta is a half-hour show that debuted in 2016. It spanned 4 seasons, which ended this past year in 2022. And here's the official synopsis. Ern and his cousin Alfred, based in Atlanta, try to make their way in the world through the rap scene. Along the way, they come face to face with social and economic issues touching on race, relationships, poverty, status, and parenthood. And as we do always here on the Spun Today Podcast, I want to shout out each and every one of the writers because, as you know, as I've said in the past, it's my humble opinion that the writers are the heartbeat, the brain power, the source, the soul, the essence of everything. Every TV show, movie, etc. that we enjoy. Sure, the directors and showrunners and producers and actors and behind the scenes folks all play a part, all sprinkle their seeds over what eventually blossoms into a final product. But none of it would exist, again, in my humble opinion, without that initial germ of an idea put down on paper. So shout out to each and every one of the writers, starting with number 1, the creator, Donald Glover, followed by Jamal Olori, Stephen Glover, which is Donald Glover's brother, Ibra Aki, Tawfiq Kolaid, Stephanie Robinson, Fam Udiorji, Francesca Sloan, Janine Nabbers, Karen Joseph Adcock, and Jordan Temple. Thank each and every one of you very much for putting together one of the best series that I've seen in a very long time. Now, circling back to Donald Glover, he is a creative juggernaut. I mean, I know a lot of what he's done, but in preparation for this, I was just going through his IMDb and I'm even more in awe of him. He's so multifaceted, from writing to stand-up comedy to music to acting, and he does each at an extremely high level, if not the highest. He writes all his own music. He wrote on a ton of different like comedy shows, series type of things like the College Humor originals, UCB Comedy originals, Comedy Central Presents, etc. He wrote on 23 episodes of 30 Rock and became an executive story editor there. He wrote on all episodes and created, obviously, Atlanta, which has gone on to win 6 Primetime Emmys and a bunch of other awards. Guys, it's super talented. That's just writing alone. If between now and when I die, I had these many writing credits, and I hope, by the way, that the time period between now and when I do die spans several decades, at least. But if I had these writing credits and accomplishments, I would die fulfilled in that aspect of my life. And it's crazy because he's also done so much more. He's done a stand-up comedy, a special, which I actually remember watching way before I was like heavy into stand-up, where I watched it, where I am now, where I'm a fan of a ton of comics. I follow them. I watch different specials all the time, etc. But I actually remember watching his stand-up comedy special called Weirdo out in Massachusetts when I had first started dating my wife. This was like 10, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. The special came out in 2012, and it was really good. I remember it being really good, and I rewatched a couple clips in preparation for this, and it's something that at least in my opinion, I felt like if comedy was all that he did and focused solely on that, he'd definitely be in that top tier echelon of comics that we speak about today. He obviously has those chops. Then on the acting side, he's done everything from TV to movies, again, at the highest levels. The show Community that he was on for several years. It's not a show that I ever watched, to be honest, but I know it's a very popular syndicated show. He was in movies like The Martian and Spider-Man Homecoming, Star Wars, and the list goes on and on. Again, all top tier shit. Then on the music side, he's put out a bunch of commercial and critical successes, smashes like Redbone and This Is America, which was like the soundtrack for social commentary on gun violence here in the US, and was just lyrically and visually, like the music video, masterful. So he's absolutely a dope, top tier creative juggernaut, like I said before. And I feel like Atlanta, his creation, his brainchild, is an example of a show where the powers that be, the studios, the execs, the network, etc., got the fuck out of the way and let the creator create. And in doing so, gave us this truly experimental, creative masterpiece of a show. And I say experimental in that although there is this through line throughout the 4 seasons of where we are following Earn, which is Donald Glover's character, and his cousin Alfred, aka Paperboy, which is the rapper, played by Brian Tyree Henry, and the other 2 main characters, Darius, which is their close friend, played by Lakeith Stanfield, and Van, which is Earn's baby mama / love interest throughout the series on and off, played by Zazie Beetz. Although we are following them through that arc that I mentioned within the official synopsis section, where Paperboy is the rapper that's trying to make it, and Earn is his manager, who is himself trying to figure out the whole managing and promotion aspects of the rap game while Paperboy creates his art. Although that is a clear through line throughout the 4 seasons, sprinkled throughout, we have a ton of different episodes that in a lot of ways have nothing to do with those arcs. That's where, well, with that story arc. And at the same time are like little short films in and of themselves that thoughtfully take on fleshing out the different social and economic issues mentioned before, like race and relationship issues and poverty and status and being a parent and trying to make it and trying to figure your own shit out, etc., etc. And another dope layer to the show that I saw a really great breakdown on, I want to say a couple years ago now. So I wish I could remember the video that I saw. If I do, I'll link to it in the episode notes. But again, it's been a couple years, but this guy reviewed either season 1 or 2 and broke down how the show is also playing with a concept of surrealism, where everything in the reality of the show seems a little bit off and sometimes absurd, kind of dreamlike even. And that's an additional interesting layer that this show has going on. Now, before I wrap up, I just want to tell you guys about a few different takeaways from different episodes throughout seasons 3 and 4 that I thought were either really creative or resonated with me for one reason or another. And spoiler alert if you haven't watched seasons 3 or 4. Oh, and what's crazy creative about the show as well is that there are entire episodes where the 4 main characters that I mentioned a bit ago are not even in the episode at all, which is the case with this first one that I want to tell you guys about that actually starred my friend Doug from The Hangover, Justin Bartha. And it's an episode where they played around with the idea of reparations and what that would actually look like in practice in today's society. And it's cool how they made certain things like absurd and over the top. For example, a character by the name of Shaniqua played by Melissa Youngblood, went to Marshall Johnson's job, that's the character name played by Justin Bartha, and demanded reparations from him specifically because she traced back through her lineage that his great-grandfather owned her great-grandfather. And then she arbitrarily stated that he now owes her $3 million. You know, he's a 9-to-5 cubicle job worker guy. So he's like, $3 million? This is absurd, you know? And we pretty much, throughout the episode, follow him around and the stuff that he's dealing with in his life, like a divorce or separation from his wife, co-parenting with his daughter, dealing with this job that he doesn't like, and then this lady showing up at his job saying that he owes her $3 million, and then showing up at his house, finding out where he lives and saying, oh, this is a nice apartment, this is mine now. And I feel like that's like highlighting an absurd version of an implementation of reparations where there's no real like rhyme or reason to the amounts or who gets what and from who and why, but it's completely up to the whim of the person doing the accusing. Like there was another coworker of his that was walking around with a t-shirt that said "I own slaves" on it, and you heard like when he walked by, this guy's character was like, why would he wear something like that? Why would he like call attention to himself like that? And then the other coworker told him, oh, he got off easy. The family that took him to court for their reparations just told him that he had to wear that shirt twice a week, and one of the days had to be a Sunday. And like that was his version of reparations, which, by the way, a genius thing within that is that line of dialogue, just like that throwaway line of him having to wear that shirt twice a week, and then adding one day has to be a Sunday. I don't know why, I just thought that was genius. Just like that level of specificity there. Then you have other examples of how reparations kind of works like child support tax, and how people, once they have the amount of what they quote unquote owe, their wages get garnished similar to like a child support would for like a deadbeat dad or someone that wasn't paying their child support. And that was definitely an interesting approach to it. And it does really get the conversation going, or the questions out there of, if something like reparations came to be, how would that look? How would it be implemented? And it's definitely interesting to think about. And then, so in this episode, we're, following him going through his life, and he seems like a hardworking guy. He's trying to fix things with his wife, with his estranged wife, takes care of his daughter. It touches on parenting in this episode when the daughter also asks the father if they're racist because they're white, which to me is alluding to the whole, debate on, critical race theory and stuff like that, and those types of teachings in school, and him wrestling with trying to figure out how to explain to his daughter, no, we're not racist, but our ancestors did some racist ass shit back in the day. And then you start feeling for the guy, because like Shaniqua just like took his apartment. He just showed up one day after work, and she was having a barbecue there with a bunch of family, and ran him out of there. And he went to go stay in a hotel. And then we get the perspective of another white guy that he kind of like finally confides in, and kind of tells him how like unfair he thinks this whole reparations thing is. And the white guy does the opposite of what we, or at least me as an audience member, expected. And the dude he was talking to looked like, if I'm being honest and stereotypical, he looked like a racist white dude. And I think that's why he felt comfortable enough with telling him that he didn't agree with this reparations thing. And it came off like a taboo topic to like touch on, because there's like a lot of like virtue signaling going on that you notice throughout the episode, similar to now on like social media. Like, for example, his wife texted him, and she was using like black emojis. It was like, what? His white wife. But anyway, going back to this conversation, the guy is actually on the side of, he's like pro reparations, this white guy, racist looking white guy. And that character, by the way, is named E, played by Tobias Siegel. And then Justin Bartha's character is kind of like, why? I don't understand. I don't get it. I lost my wife, I lost my kid, I lost my place. And the guy starts bringing out to him, he was like, growing up, my granddad always used to tell us how he built everything that he has from the ground up, and it's something we were all proud of. But I'm going to find out that he had a lot of help, aka slaves, and he had a lot of kids, aka he used to rape or at least sleep with his slaves. And then he kind of went on like a little monologue of breaking down like what those actions did to the slaves and a couple generations of. So when Justin Bartha's character was like, but I lost my job, I lost my place to live, I lost my wife, my kid, then E's character responds and tells him it's a similar position that we put them in, which is kind of like a mic drop moment right there, right? It's like, fuck, that's so twisted but so true. And then just from a what the fuck from left field thing that this show does very well as well, right after that conversation, he walks outside and he's by the pool, puts a pistol to his head and blows his brains out. And that to me was like the perfect example of an episode that in and of itself felt like a movie within these 30 minutes of an episode, and is a great example of one of the episodes where you touch on a touch of social commentary and also has zero to do with the overall arc of the show and includes none of the main characters. And it was still an amazing episode. Another one of my favorite episodes from season 3, episode 5. It's called Cancer Attack. Now, the crew, different from like the first couple seasons where they're like grinding and, you know, trying to make it. In season 3, they've made it. So Paperboy's this big star. Earn is like on his management game. Everything seems to be flowing and working the way it's supposed to. Darius is with the crew, always setting the stage for an interesting adventure. And in this episode, they had just finished a concert in Budapest, and then Paperboy loses his phone. And there was this one guy that they were like really suspicious of that was like hanging around backstage. They weren't sure who it was. It turns out to be like the nephew of the owner of the venue. They are fixated on the fact that this guy has the phone. And it's a really suspenseful episode, which I think says more about us as an audience than anything else, that we're so invested in Paperboy finding his phone. You know, it's like you put yourself in that position and imagine you losing your phone or something like that. But that aside, they do like ratchet up the tension. And there's a point where they start interrogating. They get the owner of the venue to call his nephew back, or to get the number for his nephew, and then they wind up like trying to coerce him into coming back to the venue just so they could speak to him. And he does wind up coming back, but he says that he doesn't have the cell phone, and they're all like really skeptical of him. And Paperboy had this one-on-one interrogation dialogue with him, and it's just a great scene. Visually, it looks great. There's like a warehouse kind of anything can happen vibe to it. And I'm a sucker for dialogue, right? Like long monologues, back and forth dialogue. To me, I just see it as like a, you know, tennis match between the party speaking. And the dude that plays that character was so weird and so believable. He did an amazing job. He played the character of Wiley. His name is Samuel Blanken. And he still holds to the fact that he, you know, doesn't have the phone, doesn't know where it is. But Paperboy is getting upset because he's realizing that a lot of what the guy is saying, and he's like weird and going off on tangents and just like meandering in conversation, while at the same time sprinkling in like deep shit, like everyone just wants to be seen. But in the stuff that he's telling Paperboy knows where he's getting it from. And it's from like notes that he has on his phone from, you know, like old songs that were never released or anything like that were only on that phone. So he knows he has the phone. And that's just such a dope episode, and so interesting in that, again, they draw us into a seemingly innocuous situation and we get really invested in it. That's just a testament to, again, the setting, the scene, the dialogue, the writing, that you can be like so interested in the whereabouts of somebody else's cell phone. Then there's an episode called White Fashion, and it's playing with the idea, to me, it's playing with the idea of like cultural appropriation, amongst other things. And Paperboy and a few other like popular influencers being asked to be the faces of this fashion brand, and they're all minorities. And it's like a super high end, think like you know, Louis Vuitton, or LVMH owns Louis Vuitton, and Bernard Arnault is the chairman of all that. And this white owned company is looking to get into these black and minority markets by having their biggest stars and influencers wear their clothes. And then there's a dope exchange between Earn and Paperboy, where Earn is telling him that he should be asking for more, not just like a cash payment and some free clothes, because Paperboy is like telling them, you know, yeah, you know, I'll rock your clothes, but I need, you know, 5 tailored suits. I need, you know, X amount of sneakers, X amount of shoes. I need, you know, XYZ. Gives them like a laundry list of like a bunch of different clothing, and they say yes to everything. And there's a funny quick aside, while Paperboy is getting measured by a French tailor, he just tells the guy gracias when he's done, which is hilarious because obviously the guy's French. But during this, Earn is telling him, listen, you should ask for more. You should ask for a board seat. So you could like learn the infrastructure of how this fashion thing works, and then use that information to reinvest in your community, etc. And then Paperboy just tells Earn they kill that nigga, the one that wants to sit on the board and learn the infrastructure and reinvest in his own community. I don't want that. That dude gets killed. So I'd rather just get some free drip and keep it moving. It's an interesting juxtaposition there. Then again, in playing within this world of cultural appropriation or this topic rather, Darius is looking for some Nigerian food there in London, and he's looking for some Nigerian food, and he hears of this restaurant, and he winds up taking a lady that was there in the fashion house that was her job was to get everybody, the food that they wanted and stuff like that. And Darius tells her that he wants some Nigerian food. She doesn't know where to get what he wants. He finds a place, and he winds up taking her, and they have lunch there. And like, she loves it. She's like raving about it. Everybody there is, it's an authentic like Nigerian spot. The people there eating for the most part are all black people. It's black owned. The staff is black. And Darius is there with this white lady and putting her onto Nigerian culture, and she just loves it. And then, she asks the owner of the restaurant if she could have her card, because she would love to work with her one day, and maybe she can help, promote her restaurant and stuff like that. And she's excited. She gives it to her. Then fast forward, long story short, Darius winds up going back to that spot a few days later, and he sees that the restaurant is boarded up, and there's a Nigerian food truck outside, and the lady that he took there to have lunch with is inside the food truck. And he's kind of like, what the hell, what happened? What's going on? Where's so-and-so, the owner of the restaurant? And the white lady is like, oh, I'm not sure. I honestly, I haven't seen her since the last time we came here to have lunch, but I was able to get in touch with the landlord of the building, and I was able to purchase it and take it over. And it's much more efficient to have a food truck than a brick and mortar place. So once I took over the property, I shut it down and then opened up this Nigerian food truck. You got to try it, because the clientele around here loves the Nigerian food, like you told me, and this and that, and blah, 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 blah. And she's like so hype and stuff. And Darius is like, what the fuck? And he's like upset at himself for technically participating in this hostile takeover, aka gentrification of the original Nigerian restaurant that was there. There was a really interesting take. Then there's another episode that I really liked, season 3, episode 7. It's called Trini to the Bone. Trini to the Bone, where again none of the main characters are in it. It follows this power couple that has a little boy. He's probably around 5, 6, 7 years old, who is pretty much raised by his nanny, who's Trinidadian. And this is a trope that you see often, especially here in New York, where you have a white child that is with a black or Latino or Asian nanny. And then this couple who is wrapped up in their careers comes to a realization that they don't know as much about their kid as they thought they knew when the nanny winds up dying. And they knew almost close to nothing about the nanny. Like, she took care of everything, and they knew nothing about her. And then, but the kid knew a lot about her, loved her, and knew a lot about her culture, etc. And the family winds up going to the funeral, and it's like this culture shock for them. Meanwhile, the kid is loving it because he's like in this culture that the nanny's always told him about and raised him on. But the parent, it's like a bit of a shell shock situation for them. But the funniest thing that happened in this episode is that Chet Hanks is in it, and he plays a member of the family, or a close friend of the family. And he speaks in that, thick Jamaican-like Trini accent that Chet Hanks has spoken in the past and like rapped in and shit. And the mother asks him where he's from. He's like, I'm from Tribeca. And she was like, I would have never thought with that. You have a very heavy accent. And then he says, kind of like dumbfounded, he's like, everybody says that. Which is just like a hilarious moment if you know like the backstory of like Chet Hanks is Tom Hanks' son, one of his sons, and Rita Wilson's. He has these like reggae, rap, heavy Jamaican accent songs. And would like talk like that often, and it was like a thing for a minute. And then for him to like lean into it and play into it. And I actually heard him on a podcast. He was on The Fighter and the Kid, and he spoke about how like Donald Glover reached out to him and asked him if he would do that part, and he obliged, obviously. So that's just a testament to Donald Glover and his creativity and his ability to have like a pulse on pop culture and things that are going on. There's so many takeaways, folks, from this show and these last 2 seasons. I highly recommend. Just have a few more that I want to share with you guys. There's an interesting episode where they're in Amsterdam. Again, they're doing this like European like rap tour, and Darius and Paperboy, go around to like explore Amsterdam. Ern is doing his own thing. He had bumped into Van, who was randomly in Europe, and they're trying to, work on their relationship and stuff like that. But the episode focuses on Paperboy and Darius. Darius gives Paperboy some drug. I don't remember what it was. If it was like Molly, or I think it was like acid or something like that. But long story short, he winds up beginning to trip. He bumps into this like random woman named Lorraine, played by Ava Gray, after he like ducks into this like jazz club, and she's like really intrusive and kind of rude. But as the story goes on, he's like avoiding her and gets away from her, but she finds him again, and she's like asking him questions. And the whole time this is going on, you wind up realizing that she's like, or at least to me, the personification of the trip that he's having, the drug trip that she's having. And she's asking him questions, like introspective questions about his career and his finances and stuff like that. She asks, who owns your masters? Do you even know? Why do you have family watching your finances? And she like kind of represents his mother in that way. And my favorite takeaway from this episode is that at the end, he has these questions that he just even thought of to think up as questions. And he asks Ern, who's his manager, once they're back at the hotel, he's like, yo, who owns my masters? And then Ern tells him, you do. I negotiated that for you in your contract. And that's so ill to see that it didn't go the other way, that it went the way that it should go. And that Ern is so on top of his game that he knows from a management perspective to do that. Because you hear so many stories of like rappers and artists and industries just getting taken advantage of by contracts and the legalese within them, and just signing their rights away in perpetuity, etc. So that was dope and refreshing to see it go the right way. Then fast forward to season 4, episode 2. The episode is called The Homeliest Little Horse. And in this episode, there's a sick revenge story in this arc that Ern goes on that I'm not going to ruin, but it's really dope how that came together. But I wanted to highlight a couple of lines of dialogue that I really enjoyed. And Ern is in this episode. You see him on a couple of therapy sessions, and you see the back and forth between him and his therapist. And his therapist asks him who he trusts. And I really liked what he said, because I agree with him for the most part. And he says that I trust people to be themselves based on their incentives and what they rationalize. And I think we all do that to some extent. Then I don't remember if it was him or his therapist, probably his therapist, that said something else in this episode, which was that spite is powerful. It's a pure, powerful thing, which is definitely true. If that powerfulness goes in a positive or negative direction, that's a different thing, but it's definitely a powerful thing. And lastly, another line, which is that anxiousness and anger, you can't accomplish your goals with those. They're definitely not helpful. And it's a good kind of like totem or quick reminder for ourselves whenever we are in an anxious or angry phase or mood. You definitely can't accomplish your goals with those. Then season 4, episode 6, there's an episode called Crank That Killer. And by the way, a ton more happens in each of these episodes, and there's a bunch of episodes that I'm skipping over. I'm just giving you guys sprinkles of moments that I really enjoyed. And here's 2 from this specific episode. It takes place mainly in a mall, and there's this kid named Roberto, who's an aspiring rapper played by Adrian Mauro, and he works at the mall within the food court. Similar to all mall food courts, you have like the Asian spot, you have the Sbarros, you have a burger place or 2, and different options, right? And there's one point that resonated because it's just like so true, and apparently universally true, of malls everywhere. Shout out to Queen Center Mall, where this dude is passing by Roberto's character, who's working for one of the Asian spots, handing out the like the teriyaki chicken on a toothpick, like that's a free sample that they give out. And he just passes by and he's like, nigga, everybody know what that tastes like, and just keeps walking. I just thought that was hilarious. Then Roberto finds out, or he hears that Paperboy is in the mall. Like, word is getting around because he's like laying low in the mall or something like that. He's trying to avoid somebody. This girl that also works in the food court named Veronica, played by Yanelisa. Straight Dominican name right there. Shout out to her. Roberto tells her, "Are you serious? Paperboy's really here. I gotta go, spit for him. Can you cover for me?" And, he works at the agent spot. And then he just like runs away to like go look for Paperboy. And she yells out, she's like, "But I work at fucking Sbarro." That was just a funny ass scene to me. Season 4, episode 7, called Snipe Hunt. Ern and Van again, played by Zazie Beetz, finally have a open heart-to-heart with each other. They reconcile and wind up getting back together and agree to give things another shot. Their daughter, Lottie, played by Austin L. Fisher, who does an amazing job. She, throughout this episode, because it mainly revolves around them, and, taking Lottie out for her birthday for like a birthday weekend at a lake, and Ern like rents out the whole area and it's like really private and it's just them, and they're going like above and beyond for her. But Lottie, throughout the entire episode, she seems like really sad. At the news of, her parents getting back together and her seeing them, finally reconciling things, she finally smiles. And that's obviously showing like the familial impact of broken homes and how it, directly affects obviously everyone involved, but primarily the kids of those couples that split. But that was definitely a good closure moment and episode for those two characters. Then we have the final season 4, episode 10, which I'm not going to spoil the ending for you because, to be honest, I'm still processing it and want to see a few different breakdowns on it. Probably rewatch the episode as well. But I do want to leave you all with one takeaway from a dope scene between Darius, Lakeith Stanfield's character, and a lady he bumped into in the pharmacy when he was picking up some medication. Her name was Cree, played by Cree Summer, who has done, I feel like, more voiceover than anybody ever. Looking at her IMDb, she was like Elmira from Tiny Toons. She did Rugrats, literally like 300 different things. She was on episodes of all like sitcoms like Living Single, Fresh Prince. But I know her mainly and recognize her mainly from A Different World, where she played Freddie. She and Lakeith Stanfield's character have an impromptu conversation there, and they touch on having like anxiety or depression, and because that's a medication that Darius seemed to be picking up. And she starts telling him different ways that she has learned to like cope with things and how she has felt out of place and that she had to fit in and stuff like that. And I want to leave you all with what she told him within that scene that really resonated with me, which was, quote, "I realize that I'm a part of this world too, and I'm allowed to dance in it like I want to." And I just thought that was so dope. And that, folks, was my little recap and review of Atlanta seasons 3 and season 4. Definitely watch it. One of the best shows that I've seen in a long time. Absolute instant classic. Hats off again to Donald Glover and that whole team. Check it out once again on FX or stream it on Hulu.